In August 1944, somewhere in occupied France, an official German military photographer documented what appeared to be a routine inspection at a labor camp. The photograph showed everything you'd expect. Neat rows of prisoners standing at attention, stern-faced German guards, rigid military discipline. For 76 years, this photograph sat in Allied military archives, catalogued simply as Labor Camp Inspection, France, August 1944. But in 2020, when a digital restoration specialist applied advanced facial recognition software to a high-resolution scan, she noticed something everyone had missed for 76 years. Something small, something almost invisible. A smile, hidden in plain sight. A smile that reveals one of the most extraordinary resistance operations of World War II. Subscribe now, because this isn't just a story about a photograph. It's a story about courage, ingenuity, and the incredible lengths one man went to fight back against impossible odds while smiling directly at the camera. The photograph was taken on August 12, 1944, by a Wehrmacht photographer assigned to document military operations in occupied France. The image shows a standard inspection at a forced labor camp in the Normandy region. 3 German officers observing, approximately 60 prisoners in striped uniforms standing at rigid attention, armed guards, and in the background, barracks, barbed wire, watchtowers. Everything about the photograph screams oppression and control. Captured by Allied forces during the liberation of Normandy, it was filed among thousands of German military documents with minimal analysis. Just another photograph documenting Nazi atrocities. Over the decades, it appeared occasionally in historical publications and museum exhibitions. Researchers used it to illustrate conditions in French labor camps, but no one looked closely at the faces. Until Dr. Sarah Chen. Sarah was a digital forensics specialist at Stanford University working in 2020 to create high-resolution digital archives of World War II photographs. She collaborated with the National Archives using modern technology, facial recognition, micro-expression analysis, digital enhancement, to extract new information from historical images. Most historical photographs have never been truly examined in detail, Sarah explained. When they were taken, printing technology was limited. Details were lost. Modern digital scanning can reveal details no one has ever seen. Sarah scanned the labor camp photograph at 12,000 dpi from the original negative. Then she applied facial recognition and micro-expression analysis software, technology originally developed for law enforcement to detect subtle emotional indicators. The software analyzes tiny details, facial muscle position, eye angles, lip curves, micro-expressions that last fractions of a second, but reveal genuine emotional states. Sarah ran the analysis on each visible face: the German officers, the guards, the prisoners. Most results were expected: fear, exhaustion, tension, resignation. But one face, one prisoner in the 3rd row, 5th from the left, showed something completely different, something impossible. The prisoner was smiling, not visibly. His mouth wasn't turned up in any way visible to casual observation. His expression looked as blank and exhausted as every other prisoner. But the micro-expression analysis detected telltale muscle movements, slight activation of the zygomaticus major muscle, engagement of the orbicularis oculi, subtle patterns consistent with authentic happiness or satisfaction. This prisoner, standing at attention during a brutal German inspection, surrounded by armed guards, living in starvation conditions, was experiencing genuine positive emotion. He was hiding it successfully from everyone with human eyes. But the camera had captured the truth. And 76 years later, AI detected it. Sarah stared at the zoomed-in face on her monitor. "Who are you?" she whispered. "And what are you smiling about?" Sarah spent 6 weeks trying to identify the smiling prisoner using facial recognition to compare the prisoner's face against thousands of photographs of liberated prisoners and resistance fighters from France in August-September 1944. The software flagged 17 possible matches. One stood out. Thomas Laurent, age 28, a schoolteacher from Caen, arrested in April 1944 on suspicion of resistance activities. Sarah requested records from the French National Archives. 3 weeks later, she received arrest records, prisoner registration, witness statements, and pre-war family photographs donated by Thomas's family in 1998. Facial recognition compared young Thomas in his pre-war photos to the gaunt prisoner in the camp inspection photo. The software returned a 97.3% probability match. Thomas Laurent, schoolteacher from Caen, arrested for resistance activities, imprisoned in a forced labor camp. And on August 12, 1944, while standing at attention during a German inspection, he was hiding a smile. What she discovered about his story was extraordinary. Thomas Laurent was born in 1916 in Caen. He became a primary school teacher in 1938, married his wife Marie in 1939, and had a son Pierre in January 1940, months before Germany invaded France. When France fell in June 1940 and occupation began, Thomas continued teaching under strict German oversight. Schools used approved textbooks, taught revised history portraying Germany positively, and enforced discipline preparing French children to be compliant subjects. Thomas hated every minute. By 1941, he had contacted the local resistance network. His role was initially small, passing messages, hiding documents, providing his school as an occasional meeting place. But Thomas had a particular skill that made him invaluable. He was an expert in codes and ciphers. Before the war, Thomas had been fascinated by cryptography as a hobby. He studied historical codes, invented his own cipher systems, even taught basic code breaking to advanced students. When the resistance learned this, Thomas became a key communications specialist. He developed coded message systems allowing resistance cells to communicate with each other and Allied intelligence without German detection. His most important contribution was the Laurent system, a method of hiding coded messages in apparently innocent documents using subtle variations in handwriting pressure, letter spacing, and punctuation that were invisible to casual reading, but could be decoded by trained operatives. The Laurent system was used throughout Normandy in 1943 to 1944 to coordinate sabotage, share intelligence about German troop movements, and communicate with Allied forces planning D-Day. But in April 1944, 2 months before D-Day, Thomas was betrayed. A French collaborator reported Thomas's resistance activities. German security forces raided his home at night, arresting Thomas and confiscating his papers. They found coded documents. They knew he was involved in resistance communications. They tortured him for information about other resistance members and code meanings. Thomas revealed nothing. Unable to break him, and frustrated by their inability to decipher his codes, the Germans sent Thomas to a forced labor camp near Bayeux, housing political prisoners, resistance suspects, and security threats. The conditions were brutal. Prisoners worked 12 to 14 hours daily on construction projects supporting German military fortifications. Food was minimal: thin soup, hard bread, occasional potato scraps. Disease was rampant. Guards beat prisoners for minor infractions. Several prisoners died weekly from exhaustion, disease, or punishment. Thomas survived through determination and support from fellow prisoners. His wife Marie and son Pierre remained in Caen, living in constant fear and uncertainty. Marie received no communication. Prisoners couldn't send letters. Thomas spent April, May, June, and July 1944 in the camp, working, starving, enduring. But he was also watching, listening, planning. Because Thomas, the schoolteacher who specialized in codes and hidden messages, had noticed something very important about the camp's German guards. Something they didn't realize. Something that gave prisoners an extraordinary opportunity. The camp's work details took prisoners outside the perimeter daily to work on German fortifications, building bunkers, reinforcing coastal defenses, constructing anti-tank obstacles. The guards supervising these details were Wehrmacht infantry soldiers, not specialized camp guards. They were regular soldiers assigned to temporary guard duty, rotating every few weeks. And they were increasingly demoralized, tired, and careless. By May 1944, with Allied bombing increasing and invasion rumors growing, German morale was deteriorating. Thomas noticed the guards were not carefully counting prisoners during work details. Thomas realized prisoners could temporarily leave work details, accomplish tasks outside the camp, and return without guards noticing. So Thomas organized an operation that would change everything. Thomas recruited prisoners he knew were resistance members or sympathizers. Approximately 15 men eventually participated in an audacious intelligence operation. During work details throughout May, June, and July 1944, these prisoners would quietly slip away from work sites in pairs, complete intelligence missions, and return before guards noticed. What kind of intelligence missions? They were observing and documenting German military positions throughout Normandy immediately before and after D-Day. Thomas trained prisoners in a simple observational system: count artillery pieces, note troop positions, observe defensive obstacles, memorize road conditions and bridge locations. Prisoners would slip away during lunch breaks or when guards were distracted, observe German positions for 30 to 60 minutes, then return to the work detail. Back at camp, Thomas would debrief each prisoner, recording the intelligence using his cryptographic skills. But here was the problem: how to get the intelligence to Allied forces. Prisoners had no direct communication with outside resistance. They couldn't send letters. They couldn't escape. The camp was too secure, and families would face retaliation. Thomas developed a solution brilliant in its simplicity, and it involved something the Germans actively encouraged. The labor camp included a small woodworking shop where prisoners with carpentry skills produced simple items: tool handles, repair materials, small furniture. The Germans permitted this because it was useful. Products were used in camp or sent to German military units. Thomas wasn't a trained carpenter, but he volunteered for woodworking duty and learned quickly. Several other prisoners in his intelligence operation also joined the workshop. Thomas developed a system for encoding military intelligence into carved wooden items using the same principles as his Laurent system. Subtle variations invisible to casual observation, but readable by anyone who knew the code. The prisoners carved decorative patterns into wooden tool handles and small boxes. The patterns appeared to be simple folk art designs: flowers, geometric shapes, traditional Normandy decorative motifs. But the patterns were actually maps. The placement of flowers indicated artillery positions. The depth of carved lines indicated troop concentrations. The type of geometric pattern indicated types of fortifications. The spacing between design elements indicated distances. To German guards, these looked like harmless decorative carvings. Prisoners making folk art. Nothing suspicious. But to a resistance operative or Allied intelligence officer who knew the code system, these carvings were detailed military intelligence maps of German positions throughout Normandy. The challenge was getting the carved items to Allied intelligence. Thomas's solution involved a young German guard who had no idea he was helping the resistance. His name was Dieter Schneider, a 19-year-old Wehrmacht private from Bavaria assigned to the labor camp in May 1944. He was young, frightened, visibly demoralized, and openly told other guards he believed Germany was losing the war. Thomas, who spoke some German, began carefully building a relationship with Dieter. He would speak to him politely during work details. He noticed Dieter liked the carved wooden items prisoners made. Thomas offered to make Dieter a carved box as a gift. Dieter was surprised and touched. He accepted. Over the following weeks, Thomas made several carved items for Dieter as gifts: a letter opener, a small box, a picture frame. Each contained encoded intelligence about German positions. Then Thomas carefully suggested, "These items would make nice souvenirs to send home to your family." Dieter agreed enthusiastically. He began sending the carved items home to his mother in Bavaria through the German military postal system. What Dieter didn't know was that Thomas had arranged, through carefully coded communications with other resistance prisoners, for the packages to be intercepted by resistance operatives working in the postal system. The Germans themselves were delivering intelligence to Allied forces. Between May and August 1944, Thomas's operation sent approximately 30 encoded intelligence items to Allied forces. The intelligence provided detailed information about German defensive positions, artillery locations, and troop movements throughout Normandy during the critical weeks leading up to and immediately following D-Day. Allied intelligence officers later confirmed in classified reports that the Laurent carved intelligence provided valuable tactical information used in planning operations during the Normandy campaign, and the Germans never suspected a thing. On August 12, 1944, a Wehrmacht photographer arrived to document an official inspection of the camp. The prisoners were ordered to assemble in neat rows. Thomas stood in the third row, fifth from the left. As he stood at attention, Thomas was thinking about what he had accomplished. 3 months of intelligence operations, 30 encoded items sent to Allied forces, detailed maps of German positions, information that had contributed to Allied operations. He was thinking about young Dieter Schneider, innocently sending coded intelligence to his mother, never knowing he was helping the resistance. He was thinking about liberation, because by August 1944, everyone knew the Allies were advancing rapidly. Liberation was coming, soon. Thomas Laurent, standing exhausted and starving in a German labor camp, was experiencing a moment of profound satisfaction. He had resisted. He had fought back. He had contributed to the Allied effort even while imprisoned. And the Germans taking this photograph had absolutely no idea. The micro-expressions of satisfaction and pride that crossed his face lasted only fractions of a second. He suppressed them immediately. Any visible smile would have been dangerous, but the camera captured them. And 76 years later, AI analysis detected them. 3 days later, on August 15, 1944, Allied forces liberated the camp. German guards, hearing Allied forces approaching, abandoned their posts. By afternoon, American soldiers entered the camp and found approximately 90 prisoners, emaciated, exhausted, many seriously ill, but alive. Thomas Laurent was among them. Thomas immediately asked to speak with an intelligence officer. Captain James Morrison interviewed Thomas through a French translator on August 16, 1944. Thomas explained his intelligence operation, the coded carvings, the interception system, the intelligence about German positions sent to Allied forces over 3 months. Within hours, Morrison received confirmation from Allied intelligence headquarters. The Laurent carved intelligence operation was known. The intelligence had been received and used. Thomas Laurent was recognized as a valuable resistance asset. But then came a moment of terror. On August 17th, French authorities arrived to begin processing prisoners and identifying potential collaborators. Colonel André Beaumont, a resistance leader from Caen, conducted security screenings. During interrogation, the captured German guard Dieter Schneider mentioned that he had been friendly with a prisoner named Thomas, who had made him carved items. To security officials investigating collaboration, this looked suspicious. Why would a prisoner be friendly with a German guard? Could Thomas have been a collaborator or informant? The questions were serious. In the chaos following liberation, French authorities were conducting aggressive investigations to identify collaborators. Summary executions of suspected collaborators were occurring throughout France. Thomas faced a horrifying possibility. After surviving months of brutal imprisonment, after successfully conducting one of the most audacious intelligence operations of the Normandy campaign, he might be accused of collaboration and executed by his own countrymen. Colonel Beaumont was a careful man who believed in evidence, but the circumstantial evidence looked problematic. Thomas sat in a tent, exhausted and terrified, waiting for Beaumont to decide his fate. Colonel Beaumont decided to investigate thoroughly. He interviewed Dieter Schneider, who confirmed Thomas's account. Yes, the prisoner Thomas made me carved items. He said they were gifts. I sent them home to my mother. I had no idea they contained anything important. Then Beaumont requested examples of the Laurent carved intelligence from Allied headquarters. On August 19, 1944, a courier arrived with a package containing carved wooden items and photographs with annotations showing the decoded intelligence. Beaumont examined the items carefully. The carvings were beautiful folk art patterns, but when viewed according to the decoding instructions, the patterns resolved into detailed military maps, artillery positions, troop concentrations, defensive fortifications. Beaumont brought Thomas into the tent. "Did you make these?" Thomas examined them, his eyes filling with tears. "Yes, I made the box in June, the letter opener in July. I encoded the intelligence based on observations my fellow prisoners made during work details." "Describe the code system," Beaumont instructed. Thomas explained in detail, and his explanation matched perfectly with the intelligence annotations. These carvings provided intelligence that Allied forces used in operations throughout July and August, Beaumont said quietly. "You are a hero of the resistance." Thomas was cleared with full commendation. He returned home to Caen on August 23, 1944, to find his home partially destroyed by Allied bombing during the Battle of Caen. But his family had survived. The reunion with Marie and Pierre was joyful, tearful, overwhelming. Marie had believed Thomas might be dead. Pierre, now 4.5, barely remembered his father. Thomas spent the following months rebuilding, physically rebuilding their damaged home, emotionally rebuilding his relationship with his son, professionally rebuilding his teaching career. He was awarded the Resistance Medal by the French government in 1945. But Thomas rarely spoke about his experiences. Like many resistance members and survivors, he preferred to move forward rather than dwell on trauma. He returned to teaching. He and Marie had 2 more children. He lived a quiet, ordinary life as a school teacher in Caen. He never knew that the inspection photograph taken on August 12, 1944, still existed in archives. He never saw it. He never knew it had captured his hidden smile. Thomas Laurent died in 1989 at age 73. His widow Marie lived until 2003. His son Pierre became a historian specializing in Normandy resistance operations, partly to understand what his father had experienced. When Dr. Sarah Chen identified Thomas Laurent's hidden smile in the photograph in 2020, she contacted Pierre Laurent, then 80 years old. Pierre was astonished. "I never knew this photograph existed. Seeing this photograph, seeing that smile, it's like seeing a part of him I never knew. He's proud in this photograph. Despite everything, he's proud because he resisted." Dr. Sarah Chen published her research in 2021. The article described Thomas's story and the broader implications of using AI analysis to uncover hidden details in historical photographs. The response was extraordinary. The photograph went viral, viewed millions of times by people moved by Thomas's hidden smile of defiance. The photograph is now displayed in the Memorial Museum of the Battle of Normandy in Caen, with full explanation of Thomas Laurent's intelligence operation and the hidden smile that revealed his secret triumph. The photograph reminds us that photographs can capture truths we don't notice until we look closely enough. That resistance takes many forms, some visible, some invisible until technology reveals them. That courage persists even in impossible circumstances. Sometimes a smile is just a smile, and sometimes it's a revolutionary act captured in a fraction of a second, invisible for 76 years, but never truly hidden. Because the camera always sees. And eventually, so do we. What other stories of courage are hiding in plain sight in photographs we think we've already seen? Subscribe for more stories of photographs that reveal hidden history when we finally look close enough to see what was always there.